Hey everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts, number 425, Behind the Legs. I'm Exterminator, and thank you so much for joining me. And this is another very long technical one. So there is going to be quite a lot of summarization, but there are some pretty interesting points that I do want to touch on specifically within this. And again, as always, I do not want to discredit the quality of this because it's really good. It's just so long it would take me forever to read this outright, word for word. But definitely, I recommend if you are interested in this type of like technical behind the scenes stuff, definitely give this a read. These are always really interesting, and the Factorio devs are awesome in the fact, many facts, but one of them is that they actually go to the trouble and are willing to like show this stuff like behind how things actually work. I think not many developers do that. So, I feel bad whenever I like say, oh, this is a really long technical one, so I'm just going to summarize it. I don't mean that at all like in a negative way. It's just time wise, I kind of have to do that instead of doing a 45-minute video of me rambling or just reading really really boring sounding. So boring sounding because I don't know what a lot of this means. Anyway, let's hop into it. So this is written by Strangepan and Arendelle. So we get behind the scenes kind of a look at the optimizations, techniques, all that used to improve and optimize, of course, the algorithm for walking for not only Spidertrons, but for the Gleba enemies as well. So Spidertron optimization. Basically, they needed to optimize Spidertron's performance, focusing on the inefficiencies in the algorithm used for Spidertron leg placement, particularly when navigating obstacles. So some improvements include reducing redundant collision checks, implementing search exclusion zones, which significantly reduce computational demands, making the addition of pentapods feasible. And we can kind of see some stuff here, so we can kind of just look at the captions under the pictures, I think would be good. So all the positions a Spidertron's leg checks for collision. This example shows 1,600 checks, but this isn't even the worst possible case, also not illustrated. It's the fact that every single leg on Spidertron is performing this check every single tick, which is really crazy. I did not realize that it was this intense. Like, I knew there was a lot, but damn, that's an insane amount. And then we go to this. The Spidertron's leg checks for far fewer positions now, so this is obviously the new movement algorithm. This example shows about 70 collision checks. Also note the new scan system, which produces better results compared to the spiral. I realize I did not go full screen. My bad. So yeah, this kind of only shows like very specific positions instead of like the whole spiral thing. And it's way less. Obviously, 70 is significantly less than 1,600. So this is really, really good. And basically, they kind of go more into it. The new system assigns legs to walking points, ensuring efficient movement with fewer wasted searches, which also allows for unique and organic walking patterns for the pentapods, which is great. For me, not so much because it makes them look more, arachnophobic. Arachnid is the right word, I think. After searching an area for empty space, the area is logged as a search exclusion zone for the remainder of the tick. Other Spidertron legs will skip over this entire zone when they search for empty space, which is also really smart. That definitely was a good thing to do because it doesn't really make sense for every leg to check the same zone if it's going to the same place, kind of, right? And then this is what we just went over. So you can see there's kind of like groups here. So 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2. And then after all legs in group 1 have finished stepping, legs in group 2 can start stepping afterward, 3, then 4, then 5. Some pentapods, however, prefer to count backwards, apparently. Man, I hate this one over here. This is going to freak me out forever. To implement this, every leg on pentapod or Spidertron is assigned, so that's kind of what we went into. After these 3 leg optimizations and several other smaller ones we don't have time for, Spidertrons are now far less taxing in UPS. In a test save designed to stress Spidertron mobility, I measured an average of 53.56 fewer milliseconds per update, approximately 2.15 times faster. So in Factorio 2.0, players should now be able to command larger armies of Spidertrons without obliterating the UPS. Results may vary. So yeah, this is fantastic that we can control larger groups. I think with the new RTS remote, or whatever they end up calling it, probably still that, but I think that also will make it easier to control groups. Obviously, that's not an optimization, but that's like a usability thing. Whereas combined with the optimization, we should be able to have some pretty good Spidertron armies, which I suspect we will need for enemies on most planets for sure. It'd be interesting having like the Spidertrons like go into combat against the pentapods. I kind of feel like they might lose against the really big ones, but that will definitely be interesting to see. So new enemies, new features. Now this part is pathfinding or obstacles. Oh, this was not the part that I thought, but this is still obviously interesting. So comes new behaviors, and with new behaviors comes new engine features. We'll now discuss the game design decisions that influence the pentapod designs and the system changes we built to implement them. So pathfinding over obstacles. Basically, this discusses enhancements of the pathfinding system, enabling new enemies like pentapods to navigate over obstacles, ignoring walls, and requiring players to rely on firepower, and new defenses. This system also supports discontiguous pathfinding available via the modding API, which is very interesting because my understanding of this, and from what I've seen with comments on like the Reddit post for this and such, is this means mods could potentially do like flying or swimming enemies. Maybe flying, swimming. I don't know if swimming's a pathfinding thing as much as like not being able to have stuff in the water. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't know. Like at the last planet, Aquello is like a water planet. Maybe that'd be solved anyway. But yeah, this is going to be really interesting what modders can do with this, since it will be available via the modding API. And 2.0, I'm sure we're going to get some really interesting stuff. I look forward to the stuff I can spotlight with that. But we can kind of see here. So traversable tiles within a chunk are grouped together if their distance is less than the maximum allowable gap. Tiles along each chunk's border, remember the distance to the nearest traversable tile within the chunk. Note the screenshot does not show an example of an edge tile that is within range. And then insert some distance in untraversable terrain, always pointing back towards the last known traversable tile. A typical pathfind searches many more nodes than this illustration shows. Discontinuous pathfinding, and then that's what we went through there. So spores in the air. So this is the what I thought was worth like fully reading. One, because it's short, but two, because this is just like an actual like really visible gameplay thing. Is the pollution system overhaul. So now that walls can't keep pentapods out, the player has another problem. Pentapods could still attack any part of the factory from any direction. What is an engineer to do except surround the factory with turrets and weapons? This was still not the strategy we wanted for our players, so we need to make the strategy unnecessary. To accomplish that, they change pollution, how pollution works on Gleba. So enemy units, spiders and pentapods alike, typically choose attack targets based on pollution. When an attack party is formed, they pathfind towards the nearest chunk with a locally maximum level of pollution and attack the entities in that chunk that are emitting the pollution. Pollution works differently in Gleba than on other planets. Some machines that produce high amounts of pollution on Nauvis should emit no pollution on Gleba, and then vice versa. Basically, now how we can make pentapods prioritize specific parts of the factory without changing biter behavior. So what they've done is they implemented pollutant types. Mods can add different types of pollution, which is also going to be really interesting. Machines, plants, spawners, and tiles can each be configured to emit or absorb different amounts of pollution, of each pollution type. However, for performance reasons, only one pollutant type can be enabled per surface. So this, you can't have like 4 different pollution types on the same planet, basically. Pollution is the default pollutant type for new and existing surfaces that have pollution enabled. In Factorio Space Age, spores replace pollution on Gleba. Each pollutant type can have its own name, absorption and emission rates, chart color, and more. And basically, yeah, so with this, with the pollution being different on Gleba, pentapods focus their aggression on a few specific buildings while functionally ignoring the bulk of the factory. That is, as long as they're not provoked. So this is going to be really interesting. I'm curious if like you can just build these like non-pollution producing buildings just like wherever you want and they'll just ignore them. Kind of sounds like that might be what it is, but I don't know. They may still just I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell from how this is written. Like in a way, it almost sounds like they're on peaceful mode if they're not, if they don't send something near them that's producing pollution. But on the other hand, I'm not quite sure if that's going to be the case. But it'll be interesting either way. I really like the fact that they've added different pollutant types. I think modders will have a ton of fun with that. So redesign legs and visuals. Basically, they rework the pentapod legs to emphasize more realistic movement with updated sprites and animations. Spidertrons also received a visual update with more flexible and life-like leg movements. You can see here, stomp and straight for legs, attempt to flex at the hips and knees before stretching. Sprites change based on the orientation. This sounds like a nightmare to like animate, to be honest, but it's worth it, I think, for us at least, because it turned out really well. Now, this is, so on the left we have the Spidertron animation 1.1, and then over here, so this is what we currently play with, and this is 2.0. People definitely seemed, I was reading through forum and Reddit comments, and the majority of people seemed not pleased with the new like animation here. However, Strange Fan, I believe it was, noted multiple times on like the subreddit comments that this video was actually quite old. Like he used an older video and put in this Friday Facts, and that like the kind of jankiness and stuff with the walking of the 2.0 one has since been fixed. So I'm not as concerned. Like left to right, it does look kind of wonky, to be honest. Up down doesn't look as bad. It looks pretty similar actually, but you can definitely see, like, you notice the difference how like this leg is like kind of spasming a little bit. I don't know, Strange Man said that that's like been addressed and fixed because this video is like fairly old at this point. So that's just something to note. It does look kind of off in this video. I would agree with people's comments, but I'm not as concerned because it seems like they've already fixed that. And then lastly, the last section here is behind the scenes about how they make the Friday Facts, which is quite interesting. It's very long still, so I am going to summarize, unfortunately, but it is a very interesting read. So basically, yeah, they've never really, I think previously they did go a bit, like a long time ago, they kind of went into how they do the Friday Facts to some degree, but Arendelle decides to write about this. So most Friday Facts like this one are made the week of their release. However, usually I try to have mine done an extra week in advance. It's less stressful that way. For the enemies Friday Facts, though, I started working on it many weeks in advance, trying to eliminate all the unknowns from the production process. So the process Arendelle is talking about is all referring to the last Friday Facts on the enemies. And we'll read this first part. I took some of the randomly generated terrain as a combat arena, placed some enemies, and exported it as a scenario the same way anyone can. From the editor from previous videos, I already had some performance capture code for capturing player input for character running and tank controls, turning acceleration, etc. I extend that system to also capture player weapon input, which is mostly which weapon is selected, firing or not, and the targeted position. Here's another character loadout. Weapon damage upgrades are at level 8. So essentially, kind of just goes into the process here of, you know, what it took to actually, you know, get that Friday Facts we saw last week, and like all the iterations that it had to go through and stuff to get this right. So he recorded performance of fighting the enemies in the arena, and then I applied that performance back to the scenario, ran it again, and it played out differently, which is interesting. So all player input was the same, but the enemies didn't do the same things. Some wandered to different positions, attacked different things, etc. In the version with the script control character, instead of spawning a second strafe for an extra regular spawn, the Swamper joined the combat much earlier for some reason. So not an ideal start. After some testing, I realized that it's just not possible to have the scenario play out the same way as the input recording, both because the recording code and application code themselves are enough to change the outcome, and there's no way around that. The biggest thing to sort out was the layer of getting off track. It was obvious this sort of thing can happen easily because of the gliding wriggler hits slow the movement. When dodging gliding wrigglers, there are a lot of near misses, so it results in a lot of variability. Any changes to player movement also affect where the enemies go. The whole combat could get dragged off to an unexpected direction. So some new terrain assets were added to the map as they were completed, but this rerolled the enemy behavior, slowing the character at different times, so everything played out differently, and the character's final path looks very different. So left is the original movement path, and you can see some of the like terrain assets there, and then right is the movement path with same input but slowed at different times. And so Arendelle made some fixes, and the new system takes the log character positions from the performance captions and smooths out that path with a few passive passes of relax filter, essentially making each point the average of the point before and after. Definitely, I think looks cleaner. Again, this is like pretty far beyond my knowledge of things. All the debug data enabled: smooth primary camera mode path in blue, secondary path in orange, actual camera result in white. The purple squares are the camera bounds. Wow, this is pretty complex, honestly, for making this. I did not realize that this much went into it. And then kind of just goes more into that. It wasn't until much later that Arendelle discovered the worst offender of messing with the scenario simulation outcome. Even the change in camera script code to go from previous mode to render mode for saving screenshots is enough to break the scenario output. That means that all the time spent previewing what would happen was useless because it didn't work out the way the preview showed. And then, yeah, like weapon input capture records the time to fire, the position to fire at, and gun to use. With the flamethrower turrets, there's no target locking, but for the first regulars, it always worked just fine. And so then we can see maybe just watching the video would be better. Same scene as the original combat video, but enemy health bars are shown in a state for clarity over atmosphere. The stomper death time is not scripted, so this time it dies slightly too early, but re-rolling things could make it die too late. The character happens to survive this time, but that doesn't always happen. I will admit, watching the flamethrower roasties are pretty satisfying, and then just keep something to play and ruins the whole thing. But you can kind of see, like, you can kind of almost match this movement with stop out. So what we want to keep an eye out for here is that I guess the stomper actually dies too soon here. I don't exactly remember when it died on the original video on the Friday Pack. Having the health bars on is good, so you can see, I mean, this thing is just being pounded pretty hard by laser misses, and it's not doing a lot. So these guys obviously had a ton of health, probably and/or pretty high laser damage resistance as well. Flame seems to do the trick really well, though. So there's that. I mean, definitely going to die that early to me, but I don't know. It's hard to compare. The same scene, but this time the enemies are more evolved. It plays out but differently. Okay, so I do want to see these evolved ones. I'm looking to actually see the evolved ones. The little wrigglers look the same as the I mean, I don't know. Those guys are kind of cute, I think, but scrapers are slightly worse now. Oh, those look bigger. Oh, yeah. I think that dude is... Oh, yeah, he's bigger. So are the flying things. Oh, jeez. I really feel so uncomfortable now. I want to see the stomper. That's what I want to see. All in all, yeah, this thing is huge. So this is like the second evolution, I think. Yeah, and then there's one even above this, which is pretty crazy. So this is going to get wild. Oh my goodness, that's going to be pretty terrifying. You can see how small the player was compared to it too, right? And they finish off by saying, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope that we offered a glimpse into what it takes to create a new enemy and the kind of effort that goes into producing exciting announcements like last week's Friday Facts. I now, too, have a greater appreciation for games with wide enemy variety. Even though I had the benefit of building upon existing systems, I still had to learn the capabilities, limitations, quirks, and bugs of each one, and then figure out how to make them play together nicely. Each change needed to be carefully tested so that other parts of the game didn't break or become unbalanced. Along the way, were plenty of refactors, cleanups, bug fixes, and many pages of notes. Even so, it's obvious that the previous programmers built these systems with extensibility, performance, and sometimes code health in mind. Sometimes. Anyway, I think I've seen enough of these creepy crawlers to last a lifetime. Same here. I'll leave Gleba to the Pentapods for now. They can have it. They can have it anyway. Besides, it's about time I check on my Volcanus factory. I've been getting a bunch of alerts from there, so I sure hope nothing is disrupting my foundries. And I think this is definitely a hint that we are getting a look at some sort of enemies or natural disaster of some sort on Volcanus next week, because yeah, this very much seems like this is a lead into that. But yeah, I mean, this is already a long video. You can imagine how long it would be if I read this word for word. But overall, really still great, interesting. You know, like I said, it's really cool to see about the behind the scenes stuff with this. And I think all this stuff is good. The Spidertron movement performance to movement is really nice. The new animation I think is fine because the jankiness they said they fixed, and new pollution types, like different pollutant types, is going to be really interesting what modders can do with that. And then I am very excited for next week where we get a look at Volcanus. I've been really interested at what I have a feeling. My guess is going to be some sort of like underground burrowing like worm or something, or worms. But I guess we'll have to wait till next week to see. That is going to do it for this one, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Leave your thoughts below. I do enjoy reading those every week. Even if I don't respond to all of them, I do read basically every single comment. So, and I always enjoy hearing your thoughts. And if you did enjoy this Friday Facts and excited for next week's like I am, leave a like on the video. And if you are not subscribed and new to the channel, definitely feel free to keep up with all future content. But until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and to take care.